New opportunities and jobs are coming. So you need to constantly be thinking about, where can I plug in my unique value, my skill set, my understanding to this space. You will always have something to do. And I think what people fail to realize, that also your brand is your unique value. I always say no one can be you.
Yes, true.
That's your superpower. So yes, everyone is a lot of people can be CAs or engineers, but no engineer has the combination of experiences, both from childhood, the perspectives you've had because of the things you've been through, even like the internships you've been on, the conversations you've had, the perspective you've had in combination with your engineering background, the consulting background, is the brand. It's unique to you.
Hello, Alpha Female family, and welcome to yet another Alpha Female podcast episode. Today, I'm with such an esteemed guest. I'm actually super excited. I'm even more excited about the topic that we're talking about today. So today we're talking about building a brand authentically, and the person who's here to help me unpack this topic is a brand. So when we speak about people that are Googleable, you know, where you put the name on Google and you find them. Siba Magadla is one of those people. She is an economist. She's established herself doing such impactful work in spaces like inequality, poverty, and gender inequality. In the past, we know women of revolution as being Abomama Winnie Madikizela, but the women of today are women like Sibahle, who are actually changing the world, but through education. We can. Sibahle, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for having me.
So normally we start these on a light note.
Okay.
I think I told you we're going to play a game.
Sure.
So since today we're talking about building a personal brand,
yes,
this game is called Guess Who.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you clues
okay.
of the people.
Fair. And what if I don't know them? What if I'm just like, what happens then?
Maybe you owe me a bag.
Okay, fair. Okay, I can
or like
work
a speaking
with that.
engagement.
Okay.
Ne?
Okay,
yeah,
fair. Let's see how it goes.
So a couple of people, it won't be a lot.
Okay.
And you'll guess who they are, and then we'll go on to unpack our topic for today.
Sure.
So the first one, so he used to be a businessman.
Okay.
Reformed and then became a president.
Okay.
He's in our continent.
Yes.
He's recently, he was forced to build, a government with either parties.
Yes.
Who are we talking about?
It's our honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, yes.
Absolutely.
But I love how you introduce him, ex-business, our continent. That's very nice.
So this woman is apparently a force. She even has, she's in music. She has, people that will fight for her. They call themselves a name.
Sure.
If I give you this name, you'll know who it is.
I already know. We already know what time it is. It's Beyonce and the Bayhive.
You see, you're not that bad. So this woman, she's actually someone that I've looked up to, for most of my life. Also business-minded, has had, different stints in her career. CEO route most of the time. Okay. She was mentored by our honorable Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Okay.
And she's now the CEO of Naspers.
Oh, it's the beautiful Miss Putima Hangele, yes?
Yes.
Dabengwa.
Yes.
Yes, you need to put some respect on it.
Yes. And then this final person, so she is an economist specialist.
Okay.
She holds 2 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Master's degrees to be quite honest. One of them she got in London through a Chevening scholarship.
Sure.
She's also a non-executive director of Imali Pay.
Oh, wow.
which is one of the companies or fintech companies that are very huge in Africa. She's very passionate about our continent and just addressing our societal ills. She's the last born of 5 girls. Who's this?
Oh my gosh, I think you're talking about me.
I am.
I love the way you've introduced me. Even I was like, who's this lady? I'd like to meet her.
Right? I am. But I think when we talk about personal branding, it's very clear what those people do, who they are. And, it didn't take you long to also debunk them.
Sure.
But let's start with you, Gengok. Beautiful bio. You've done amazing work. But where did it all start? Like,
sure.
Where did it start?
I love this question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it started in Mthatha, Eastern Cape, where I was born, right? And of course, given the context of the area and surroundings I was in, like poverty, inequality, unemployment were just topical issues in a post-apartheid South Africa, right?
Yeah.
I was raised by parents who were public servants. My mom was a nurse. I call that public service because to an extent it is, right?
It is.
And my dad worked for the Transkei government at the time, but when things changed in our country, he was retrenched. It was either you take a retrenchment package or you relocate to Pretoria to work for the country's political capital. But he chose the former, to stay at home and kind of like be our dad, right? And I think part of how he raised us, having seen the history of our country and the fact that inequality was very racialized, he made it very clear that my children, I'm educating you, raising you, but there's a purpose to this. You should play a role in making sure that the same upward mobility you experience economically and socially, you play your part to make sure other people can access that. So that's how I ended up in economics.
Oh, wow. So he planted the seed. Because like economics, a lot of people don't know it, right?
It's an enigma. It's an enigma. Yeah. Go on.
Like a lot of people don't know it. And yet we hear all the time that the economy is not doing well. The economy is under strain or there's certain things that happen. So for you already, like, when did you start? Like, was it high school interest or was it you get exposed in matric and then only when you go to varsity, you actually learn about it?
Sure. I think it started with, so growing up, we did a lot of outreach work. So I think the first time I remember, the art of like giving and sharing was from the age of, I think 3 or 4. We used to go to a place called Etipini, and it was basically an area where homeless people, children are. And I remember every year or regularly, my parents would say, take all the stuff you haven't used, like your old clothes, toys, things, we're taking them and giving them away. And I remember there was this like telephone, like a box, like telephone, those old telephones. So there was like a child version of it. And I remember I didn't appreciate it at that point because the batteries weren't working. So I was like, we'll give that to someone else. And I remember handing it over to this child who was probably maybe a year or 2 older than me. And I remember how happy and how much she saw value in it. And I think I was like 3 or 4, but I realized that like life is unequal. It's not fair, right?
True.
And how we value things or kind of like attach certain, I guess, value to certain things is based on what we have, right? Our starting point.
True.
Then after that, primary, high school, the school I went to encouraged us to do outreach work. So we'd fundraise money, give it to orphanages, would even spend time at orphanages. I remember my weekends in matric. I was like at orphanage cooking, playing with the kids, like being there. But for me, it was like, it's not enough to give just my time. I think we need to talk about the reallocation of resources so that we don't have people in these circumstances. So I went to UCT, started out with actuarial science because one of the things I'd seen in Mthatha was the fact that if you didn't have medical aid and you ended up in a public hospital, you were stuck, right? And I'd seen that with my sister when she fell sick, after a period of having been unemployed, she didn't have medical aid. And I saw the level of care and
just
the fact that
sector.
Exactly. And you can't blame the nurses or the doctors because
not at all.
The lack of resources, the lack of resources, right?
Yeah, we actually had to do research. So I was doing a postgrad and we had to do research in the healthcare space. And it's shocking.
Dude.
Everything is manual. first of all.
In 2024.
Exactly. The nurses have to, when they screen someone, be the ones that are just like, okay, high risk. And they overcapacitated. There's not enough
100%.
doctors. There's not enough them.
enough.
No one is doing that demand or the capacity
100%,
planning.
100%.
So that's always a miss. And then you have those
100%.
irate patients who are hungry, who are
Exactly.
there for other socio-economic
Do you understand?
reasons.
Yeah.
So I get it.
So then I initially registered for actuarial science because I thought I'd get into the microinsurance space. What does that mean? I wanted to transform healthcare to make it more inclusive, right? For people who normally wouldn't be able to afford it.
Yeah.
But when I got to UCT first year, economics just made so much sense to me. I remember first semester, I studied so hard for that multiple choice question. And I did really surprisingly well. And then I just found myself taking a liking to it. How do we allocate resources in the presence of scarcity? What does equality mean, right? In the context of South Africa, where we have a political settlement and history of first colonialism, then apartheid, and how do we rethink the way we apply economic tools to make the world a better place? So that's how.
Are you advising there for the NHI?
So interestingly enough, when I was in honors, my dear, the budget speech, the Nedbank Old Mutual budget speech competition was basically talking about how do we actually make this NHI thing work? So where will the funding come from? So I was a part of the top 10 finalists who were advising the Minister of Finance at the time on what to do. I know, it was back in varsity.
And it's a full cycle moment.
100%. Yes. But right now, I'm not on the NHI side. I'm actually more on the labor side.
Okay.
How do we promote job creation and employment so people can actually pull themselves out of poverty and not have to lean on government or other public resources to sustain themselves? So.
That's very interesting. You make economics very interesting.
Really? I'm so happy to hear that because it makes me so happy.
I can tell that it's a space that you're very passionate about, and I can also tell that it speaks to your purpose, right? Just how you're talking about it.
Thank you.
Makes it easy. But Sige, how did you then... So you've recently ventured into career coaching.
Sure.
Which is different, right?
100%.
So I've had a coach before, career coach, but then it ended up being more about me because we had seen that some of my tools came from the struggle. My season of struggle.
100%.
And I couldn't move past that.
100%.
And I was still using the same for other seasons.
Same approach.
Yes. So it's a different space altogether. So how did you get into it?
Sure.
And what led you to it as well?
Absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of my personality type, right? I'm very empathetic. I love helping people. So even in varsity, high school, I used to mentor those younger than me and kind of based on the lessons I'd learned, both from mistakes made, but also the mentors I had, kind of help them navigate their lives, their careers, their studies better. But I then found out that with economics, you can take various routes, right? You can be a development person, you can go into investment banking, you could go into politics if you want to, or international relations, right? Be the person at the UN, kind of negotiating on certain things. But the only way for you to crystallize which path to take sooner rather than later, you kind of need someone to guide you in the way. Because what happens is that most ecos people, because they don't know what to do or get into, they end up doing a master's, doing a PhD, but with no clear plan as to what would they just think.
This is the stream.
Yeah, they just think, hi, let me upskill. There's a job that will think I'm so amazing. Let me get into this. So I think for me, I realized that actually it's so important to crystallize what the purpose is for whatever you decide to study or pursue.
True.
Right?
True. But you know what often happens, Siba? A lot of people study from what they're exposed to. So I'll speak about ourselves.
Sure, absolutely.
You started off better.
Okay.
But I think with me, I had gone to an open day at Monash. And then they said, engineers change the world. And I was like, Aibo,
that's it.
I want to change the world. I think I'm smart enough to change the world. But there's so many nuances in the different types of engineering and.
100%.
So by the time I applied, I literally looked at, okay, which one would give me more, I guess, broadness, where can I find myself working in different industries? And that's what I went for. And a lot of also other people, maybe from underprivileged backgrounds who are not exposed properly. That's pretty much how they choose their careers. They're like, okay, prospectors.
What's out there?
This looks good. So how would you then, with what you've just said, just advise someone to be like, okay, prospectus and then what?
And then what?
Yes, especially given that in 2024 we have a lot more going on and things like social media.
Exactly, So I think my approach to coaching is that you pursue work that is aligned, yes, with your strengths, your interests, and your skills, right? But some of us didn't choose what skills to acquire when we were younger. But there's always a way to rebrand or rethink or recommunicate your value based on the combination of skills you have to do the kind of work that you deeply want to do. So some of my clients are engineers who want to pivot to private sector. Other clients have been doing the private sector thing in corporate, but they want to go into entrepreneurship. And I support them. I'm like, given what you have under your belt already, this is how you can then start to position yourself for the work that is more meaningful for you. Because the labor market is changing now, right? It's less about, oh, I studied this, therefore I do this. It's more like, yes, I have this combination of skills. If I want to get into this, perhaps I can level up in this manner, but I can still use what I do have to add value to that organization.
So like your functional skills
100%. But it's just a way, it's a mindset thing as well. That's why I call myself a mindset coach. It's a mindset thing of thinking, then given what I have, this is where I can add value and this is how I can sell this value to this organization.
I
so
see,
that's the approach that I take. So my clients come from different backgrounds. It's a whole broad range, but I think having gone through coaching myself, so I had a career coach when I left private sector to get into my own thing, i.e. independent consulting, self-employment. And she kind of helped me also crystallize, like, okay, given the stuff you've done, you've worked for government, you've worked for private sector, you've even worked for like music licensing companies, corporations, like the exposure is so much. In this season, where do you want to apply 100%? So I coach my clients through that so they can take the steps they need to get into what they really want. Because I believe nothing's wasted. Just because you studied something that you didn't necessarily feel excited about, you can still use those skills to do what you really, really want to do.
True. And I think it's the perfect segue for this now segment that we're going to talk about, right? So, and we're using your coaching hat. Okay. So you can bring your economics
absolutely
and other things.
Happy.
They're not wasted.
Happy with that.
But a lot of people struggle with building a personal brand. So I initially said you are very Googleable.
Yes.
But also what I love about your brand is that it's consistent. Yes. So whether I go to YouTube or I read an article about you or someone has featured you, it's consistent.
Sure.
And I'm guessing that takes time to build, right?
It does.
So if we just unpack, what do we call, what is it? What is a personal brand? Are we walking brands? Because other people just think, just because you know me a certain way, I don't have to be outside work.
Yes.
Or if I'm a certain way on socials.
Yes.
You know, on socials I look nice and...
For sure. Yeah.
At work, I'm a nuisance. And that's okay.
Sure.
So how would you, I guess, in your experience, define a personal brand?
Sure. Right. So in my own words, I'm not using marketing jargon and stuff. A brand is what you choose to show up as, right? And what are the building blocks of that brand? It's you saying, this is the value that I bring. These are my strengths, my personality, and they're also a function of your past experiences, like they shape the way you show up, right? And then the other part is, this is also what I want, i.e. how I want to be viewed as, right? So it's a combination of what you're bringing based on like your past experiences and background, but also where I want to go. So you kind of like say, I will show up based on the opportunities and spaces I want to continue occupying.
So
then the brand becomes an amalgamation of that. Everyone is a brand. Like, we're all entities. I always say a human being is almost like an entity, right?
Yes.
And it's up to you if you self-actualize to the point of saying, I am a brand, right?
We must pause there. It's up to you
to decide whether I'm going to self-actualize to a point where I am this brand. For example, my brand is I'm a development economist with 10 plus years of experience addressing poverty, inequality, and unemployment in Africa. Right?
That's just there. That elevator pitch. I hope people are taking notes. It's so hard to even have that crystal clear elevator pitch. A lot of people struggle. So you see why we have you here.
Yes, now I do.
I love that explanation. And I think self-actualization is so important. So if you are listening to this podcast for a second time, whatever, I'm sorry. But in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the top one there is actually self-actualization. So we're always evolving. We're always trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And my understanding of what you said is that your brand can exactly get you there.
100%. And I think what people fail to realize that also your brand is your unique value. I always say no one can be you.
Yes, true.
That's your superpower. So yes, everyone is a lot of people can be CAs or engineers, but no engineer has the combination of experiences, both from childhood, the perspectives you've had because of the things you've been through, even like the internships you've been on, the conversations you've had, the perspective you've had in combination with your engineering background, the consulting background, is the brand. It's unique to you. Yes, there are other engineers or other consultants. But because of the combination, no one can be you. And that's your superpower. So then when you match that with then saying, okay, this is what I have. This is what I want. So this is the kind of person I want to be. These are the people I want to be. This is the kind of money I want to be earning. These are opportunities I want my way. Then you start to personalize the brand to signal to the world that these are the opportunities and things I want to attract.
Like a magnet.
100%.
I love it.
So even in my coaching, my clients now reach a point where, because I help them update their LinkedIn profiles, they end up not being approached by sometimes like global companies to say, we came across your profile as we're doing a search. We're working on this project in this country. Would you be interested to have a call where we can chat about how we could potentially collaborate? So it changes. It's a game changer as well. So you're not always the one knocking on the door.
So people can approach
because
you
they know what you're about.
They're attracted. That's the thing.
So that for me is what the branding is all about.
I love it. I love it. And I think the way you've explained it is just amazing. So now let's talk about what's the difference between now a brand and a reputation. Is the reputation important? Does it help you, have credibility behind that brand? So,
I like that question because more often you'd expect that they kind of like, and I mean they do that. There is a merging of the brand and the reputation. So let me make a simple example. So I have this brand, right?
You're such an academic.
I know. Even when
but I love it.
I know. I can't help it. I'm a teacher as well. So even when I speak, I have to make sure that people understand. Sometimes my clients will say, yes, ma'am, yes, teacher.
Leadership.
Because I'm like teaching. So anyway. So fine, the brand is okay. I'm this economist, I'm this career coach, right? And I mean, part of my reputation is that. But what really solidifies the reputation is how I show up now when it's time to do the work. So my delivery on those projects, when I'm like asked to provide technical support to the IFC or the International Labour Organization or the Department of Employment and Labour, they're like, we need your expertise. You said you're an economist. How I deliver does affect my reputation. Likewise with the coaching, how I make sure I actually give my clients what they're asking for forms part of my reputation. So I always even say that sometimes someone will say, oh, your brand is not that strong because you only have 2,000 followers on Instagram and so on and so forth. But because of my reputation, the clientele I'm reeling in, right? The things that are behind the scenes in terms of like the impact, the work that I'm doing, which is more meaningful.
True.
Listen, we're winning because I'm consistent. Do you understand? So there are parts where you find an interaction, but I think the reputation is extremely important because it speaks to the
now
impact
you're showing
and the
up
outcomes. Yes, of what
and
you
the
of what you're selling.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess from reputation also, now you have people that trust you.
100%. And that's everything.
They can be advocating for your brand. So if someone says, I've worked with Siba and she was amazing, then more people are like, she's amazing.
It's everything. And you know how sweet that is? Like, and I give an example. So for instance, with the work that I do is very much project-based work. So maybe it'll be a 3-6 month or 1 year, 2 year project. The beauty of having a reputation to a point where people now refer you and say, oh, we heard about Sibahle, we heard about your work from this client of this person. Now they're not even asking for you to say, tell us more. They're just like, what are your rates? Because your reputation speaks for you. The quality of your work speaks for you. And I think it's so important that in the brand building, also make sure you do your best to live up to this so that your reputation remains secure and solid.
Because we can talk about a mismatch of your a great brand where you don't deliver. What happens? People are disappointed and it starts making the rounds as well.
Exactly.
This one, it looks pretty on paper, but when it comes to delivery,
people speak. And I think the brand is good as almost like a starter, right? But to sustain the success or to sustain, right, what you're building or working on, make sure you maintain that reputation.
I love it. I love it. So Siba, a lot of writers. Do you read?
I do. I really enjoy. I'm a nerd. Like, I'm an academic, guys. I literally enjoyed. You know, one of my hobbies is just spending an afternoon in exclusive books and just sitting there and reading. That for me is an afternoon well spent.
So it's self-care vibes. Okay, I'm also an avid reader. I struggle with it now, but I listen to audiobooks and stuff like that. So a lot of people like Sheryl Sandberg, Cheryl wrote a book called Lean In, and she has others. But in Lean In, she speaks about how women don't sit at the table and they kind of sit at the back.
100%.
Then you have one of my favorite books called Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor by Sylvia. And she speaks about how primarily like women would just do their work.
Right.
And think the work speaks for them. And that's enough. And then you have nice girls never get the corner office.
Listen, it be like that though.
That's true. And it also speaks about how when we enter the workspace, we just think, you know what? My work is enough. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why is it important to build now a personal brand? And now beyond work, because most of us, we are brands and maybe we have a reputation and we've built somewhat a brand at work.
Yes.
But in this day and age where we live now, why is it important to even go beyond, especially for us as women?
It's extremely important. And I actually want to quickly go back to what you said about women. And like, I think we do go in like the workplace or any place of work with almost limiting beliefs about what's possible for us because of our gender and so on and so forth. And it's actually based on evidence, right? If you look historically, if you look at what our moms have been through, our aunts have been through, there's clear anecdotal evidence of the fact that it is harder.
Yeah.
But that should not limit us, right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
like I said, there's a unique value and essence that women bring even to corporate spaces.
Very true.
Right?
And we also,
if we also learn to leverage that instead of trying to be like our male
Shy
counterparts,
away,
i.e. the
yes.
rational male agents, as we
Yes.
call it in economics.
Yes.
If we learn to kind of like bring our value to those spaces, then it really adds something. So I'll give a case in point. So when I started at the previous management consulting company I was with, it was economics consulting, very like intense technical work, right? I came in, right? I was obviously not necessarily the best at the technical stuff coming in because I was learning how they approach the work. But what I did know is that I was great at the client engagements. I was great at sitting there, speaking to client X, saying, okay, we've come this far, blah, blah, blah. And I leveraged it. And I remember at my reviews every 6 months, what have you, they would say, Siba, the clients want to stay with us because when you are in the room, there's an energy that you bring, right? And that was my value. Do you understand? And people wanted to...
That's gold in consulting.
It's gold.
Because that's how you make money.
100%. And that's what made me win other work. It wasn't actually because I was the best at Excel modeling and stuff. You understand? But because I was crystal clear about my value and where it made sense to apply it, that's how I won. So I think even now when we think about work, because labor markets are changing, like job security now is so like...
It is.
Do you understand?
It is.
If you have clarity about your unique value and you're constantly thinking about where can I apply it, right? Either as a side hustle, either as a new job, and new sectors are changing. We're going more tech, now we're dealing with the just transition in terms of climate change. New opportunities and jobs are coming. So you need to constantly be thinking about where can I plug in my unique value, my skill set, my understanding to this space. You always have something to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I think for someone listening or watching at home, even for myself, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, what is my unique value? What is your unique value proposition? And I think it's like you're saying, once you have that, you can plug and play.
Absolutely.
Everywhere.
Absolutely.
And anyway, where it makes sense, of course.
Exactly. Exactly.
Disclaimer. Where it makes sense. That's very interesting. So that's why I guess building a solid brand is important.
And it's
beyond work.
Yeah, and it's one of my key, like with the coaching, one of the key like sessions where I'm just like, okay, think through this, work on this. And I'm very bullish about giving my clients homework because it's also like a lot of reflection and like think about in primary school, what was I always known for, right? One of my clients was known for being the guy who used to like sell like stock sweets, right? And he did so well that like he even like outpriced or outmarketed the school tuck shop.
Oh, wow.
He was just so good. It came easily for him. So because sometimes we lean more on the was I good at maths? Was I technically sound? Was I academic? Whereas there's other strengths. If you were the person that everyone came to for advice, right? Or you were the person that like, you were the team captain for sports. It speaks to the kind of value that you bring. And that you can think about leveraging even in this season of your
Sometimes
journey.
you even find it in friendships. Like if people come to you for a different perspective.
Exactly.
Not necessarily like usistoli.
Yes.
But I come to Siba if I'm stuck and I know she's gonna give me a different solution or a different perspective.
100%,
I love that.
yeah.
So there are hardcore skills, but there are also the soft and nuances that make your value.
Even something as simple as one of my clients like is she sings in the choir and she's the one who like reminds people, okay guys, we're meeting at this time. We have this like the planning, the admin around that,
the project management.
It's a project management skill. And then they're like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. Do you understand? Some of my clients are great at catering and other things, but they discount that because it's not a corporate or professional skill. But I'm like, in what world could you use those skills for good?
Yes. That's actually super life-changing. These people, you must just charge the masses for these gems. But Siba, I did speak about your brand now, and I said that it was very consistent. How did you build it?
Sure.
Where did you start? Because I can see you didn't just wake up one day and have that elevator pitch.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So where did you kind of start actually being intentional and building towards this is what I want.
Sure. So, I mean, I already kind of like shared my background and why I'm passionate about addressing poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Then I studied it. And I remember during that time, I was always a very curious person. So I always used to ask for advice. So like my lecturers, the professors, I'd be like, why are you an economist? Why did you decide to do this? So I started out picking up people's different like reasons and motivations for being in economics, and then being like, okay, so they have these reasons for doing what they do, right? What is my reason, right? And what will sustain that? And then after that, I was like, do you have any advice for me? Because I also identified people who I felt like, they are on the path that I want to be on.
So like your representation.
Exactly.
Was,
So I'd be like,
there's this
person. So I was like, I want to be like you.
Yes.
So what do you do? How do you show up in this space? And then you'd find that they'd even now introduce you to opportunities, people in spaces. So I started like attending conferences like quite young, like presenting. Like, I mean, my first trip to Uganda for something like my employer was also my sponsor at the time, because he saw, my talent. Was like, no, you're the one who's going to actually present and speak to this delegation today. We need to get this information. So I think for me, it was like being clear, yes, about the kind of mark I want to make in the world, identifying like-minded people who are ahead of me who are doing it, asking them almost for like a blueprint to
like
know
your
what to do, 100%,
as well.
and then pursuing opportunities that would help me upskill. So I've done a lot of like leadership development programs where I did learn about knowing your personal narrative, being able to communicate, because the personal, the professional, the political tend to merge. Do you understand? So learning all those tricks like while I was growing up, still in the come up, was extremely helpful. And I think that's the beauty of coaching, right? Getting a career coach to also help you. But I do want to say, for people who can't afford or can't access a career coach, what's very useful is doing an exercise as simple as asking your friends and your colleagues, like, what can you say about how I show up in the space, right? Those are some of the things, pointers that would direct you. Because sometimes we limit or truncate our value because we're like, everyone's doing this. Everyone has a job. Everyone is that. But if you actually spend time asking your friends, colleagues that you have a good rapport with, find out like, how do I show up? Give me feedback. What are my strengths? What do you think are my strengths in this role, in this space? Then that helps you to start to build this thing and even be more confident, because you actually got the feedback from people external to you.
And now you have confidence to, I guess, put it out there.
100%.
Because I think part of it is putting it out there to the world. A lot of people don't get there. And I think we were talking before we were recording, Nguti, part of me not putting alpha out there is just that. This is my baby. Now I have to put it out there to the world. But
100%.
Yeah. Okay. That's and you just made me think of, do you know Mzamo? Msito. Masito.
You've mentioned Mzamo before.
So Mzamo is the CMO from Google.
Google, yes.
He's very like, I love his talks. He's very direct, and I think he's a whiz when it comes to branding. So one of the things that he speaks about actually is having a story behind you. So for instance, we spoke about you and what made you start, and it's what you saw, which was around you. And you just spoke about having like a personal narrative as well. So how important is it to, should you have a story? Should you not have a story? Is it, should it make sense, according to you as a person? Or, you know what I mean? So how important is having a story when you are now putting yourself out there?
Yeah. So this is a very good question. I'm so glad you mentioned this, because there's a lady that I really admire. Her name is Samke Mhlongo, I think. So she's an amazing public speaker. I respect her so much. I respect the work that she's doing. And she always says, sometimes what will drive your confidence is evidence, right? You need evidence for your confidence, right?
I love that.
The narrative is important because it's evidence for your why, right? So if I say I'm an economist because there's a backstory there, there's a narrative, right? Or I'm an economist who wants to address issues in this manner. There's a narrative and a story behind it. It is the evidence, right? That makes me confident to communicate with clarity the how to my why. So I think it's so important. It's critical.
I love that.
So important.
Yeah. And I guess it also keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
Because now you know almost,
exactly.
why are you doing this? And you stay focused.
And you know what? Even as someone who's kind of like gained traction in the work that I do, there will always be environments and spaces where I still feel like I'm not enough, or I'm not as qualified, not as smart, not as experienced. Like, I mean, the conference I was in Rome recently, like my counterparts, like they speak 3, 4, 5+ languages, right? Then you're like, oh, I'm not there. But then what kept me going and comfortable was like, Oksalayo, what remains, what's important is that I have a unique story. My value is also quite unique. I have clarity about that. And that's what I'm going to signal in this space. So that even if I'm not the multilingual French, Spanish, Portuguese speaker, but they know that Usiba, her light shines in this manner.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that's so important for people.
And your light makes room for you.
Exactly.
In the room.
Exactly.
In the room.
Exactly.
Actually, Lavi.
I love Lavi.
You love Lavi.
I'm a fan.
Lavi once said, you know, when you find yourself in a room, she actually explained it. She had found herself in a room with like Oprah, Abo Richard, and she started questioning herself. And she said what she learned from that is that if you find yourself in that room, it's no longer a mistake once you're there.
Thank you.
Once you're there, you belong there, and 100%. You must move like someone who should be in the room. So I love what she said. But speaking about imposter syndrome, have you ever been an imposter to your brand? What I mean by that is, for instance, Anything we have different experiences, and maybe one experience was amazing. Maybe that's the one that put you on the map, that got you into conferences and stuff. But then kube khona a phase or a season where things are not that great, but everyone knows you as the trailblazer.
Yeah.
So have you ever had seasons or periods where you feel like, ish, I'm not that thing that I'm reading about right now? And if you have, how do you, hype yourself back up, basically? Yeah.
I think definitely I've had those moments. And I think it's seasonal. I think for the rest of my life, there'll be seasons where I feel like I'm not living up to the hype because I'm a human being, right? And obviously I believe I'm called to do something and I will give it my best shot. But there are moments where life happens or failure happens, right? Or I feel down or I'm feeling depressed in this season. So definitely that's the thing. And I can say last year there were a lot of moments where it just felt like, hey, that's what, things are not working out. But I think what really helped me is community, people who mirror back to you who you are. Who will say, Siba, fine, you're down now.
Yeah.
Sit in this low, but also learn the lesson that you need to learn, because also that low gives you a time to reflect and regroup and then come back. But also something that I always encourage people to is to ask for help. Especially with me, I'm a coach. I'm always pouring into people, always helping. So I'm always like, my cup also needs to be filled. So I'm always reaching out to those ahead of me, people I admire, people I respect, to gain the advice. So those seasons where I'm at a low are actually a nice time to use that vulnerability to get poured into. So by the time I come back up, I'm stronger, more capable, and just more hungry to keep going. Do you understand? So I don't think those moments are a waste. Do you understand? It's just your mindset regarding how you approach
And I
them.
guess also those moments help you face yourself. So for instance, I did speak about my coaching journey for a bit. We had to talk about what work means to me. Like, why is work everything?
Hectic.
Why can't I function if that area of my life is not going the way I want? And I short-circuited, right?
Sure.
Because I had to dig deep back to how I grew up and what this means for me and how I had positioned it in my life as something that will change our lives as a family, as a community.
Transform things.
So when it's not going well, it's heavier.
It's
burdening.
It's burdensome.
So I think those lows help you also face yourself.
100%.
Yeah, or versions of yourself,
100%,
or the
yeah.
attachment to things that are there as well.
Yeah, the inner work, right? The inner, like leading yourself within is pertinent to be able to lead or govern on the outside, right?
And I think it's such a common theme on this podcast, again, because every guest we have is always like, "Oh, bandla, start with yourself," but it's really very important in most things in life, if not
concur. All. Listen, you can say that again. I agree.
If not all.
I agree fully.
So, Siba, why is self-promotion important also? A lot, again, I'll go back to women. We're not very good in self-promoting, or putting ourselves out there. So why is it important to toot your own horn? Do you toot?
I do. I had to learn. So my disposition is to be very humble and modest. I had to learn. But anyway, yes, you're asking. Yeah.
Do you toot your own horn?
I've learned to. So it's so interesting. So a part of, like, I guess my journey is that, like, I've made friends across the world, and Americans are a big part of.
Guys, she's a globe trotter, a true definition of globe trotter. You know, sometimes people are like, Terminal A. Osho umuntu uya ku Terminal A just once a year. How many times a year do you go to Terminal A?
Sometimes I lose count. I think last year, I remember, was every 6 weeks. I think I had an internet. There was a point where every 6 weeks it was like, no, it was wild. But on tooting your own horn is very important because you can't wait for people to speak up for you. So I was making the example of my American counterparts who are very good of self-promoting because they literally see themselves as an entity, right? You're almost like your own business. So wherever they show up, they think of themselves as I'm a business. People need to know what I'm about. So even at a random dinner, you will go around the table, everyone has to talk about what they're doing, what they're up to, who they're looking to collaborate with. Like, those are the chats, right? And that's how opportunities come.
Yeah,
it's the people who
because people will be like, I can connect with you.
Exactly. It's the people who decide to stand in the sun, right? Who will be seen and get the opportunities. Even think about when someone is like, who's going to be a speaker for this, who's going to be a speaker. Sometimes they're not looking for the best person. They'll look for the person with the most visibility, right? Because it's believed that if you're more visible and bullish about selling yourself, it signals the confidence you have in your capabilities.
True, and what you're selling.
Yeah, whether that's true or not is another conversation.
Part now
but
comes
to
in.
win the opportunities, you need to actually be the person who self-promotes. So me on LinkedIn, every so often, I will share my milestones because my milestones signal my capabilities.
I love that. I think also, I love what you said about people that stand in the sun that will be seen. Because if you're in the darkness, who are you?
Exactly.
What do you do?
Exactly.
Here.
Exactly. No, and I think sometimes we think there'll be someone out there who will see me and save me. It doesn't work like that anymore. And especially in corporate, like, yes, do the work, but your intelligence is not enough, right? Go to the dinners, go to the events. If you are someone who's an introvert, and you're not comfortable with the events, and start forming relationships with the MDs, the senior guys. Ask for a 10-minute career advice chat. Then you become front of mind as that curious-minded young woman. Chances are you'll be front of mind for the next project that comes up.
Yes, true.
Right?
True.
So see where you can become visible strategically with the people you want to partner with, work with. Let them know that you are in the region.
Yes.
Right?
You are there.
You are in the region. You understand? So important.
Let them not lose you.
Yeah.
And that's one of, I think, the most important corporate skills. I also struggled with that because when I joined, I used to just stay in my corner.
Exactly. Do what
and
you
just
need to do.
My work until I had a mentor that used to throw me everywhere. And I had to learn. It was so lovely having you.
Thank you. Is it over? I was having so much fun. Is it over? No. It's too good.
You must come back.
I need to return. Yeah.
For episode in part 2.
Yes, actually. Because I feel like we can
go on.
Perhaps the audience has further questions and stuff.
But if you were to leave them with 3 things, we've spoken about a lot. that you want them to remember just from our conversation now and our podcast, what would those be?
Okay, I'll do a 3, 2, 1. Number 3, be clear
Academic.
about your unique value.
I love that.
What you bring to the table.
Yeah.
2, be clear about what you want to get. Number 1, signal accordingly. Given what you're bringing and what you want to get, signal accordingly. That's all I'm going to say.
I love it. Well, Nizizwele, today we spoke about building a brand authentically, and I mean, I'm with a brand.
Thank you.
A person who's done that consistently. I hope you enjoyed that episode and took out as much from it as I did. Siba, it was so lovely having you. Come back.
Thank you. I will return.
For round 2.
Let's do it.
Bye.
Bye,
Till
everyone.
next time.